And welcome to the University of Nottingham PGCE webinar. My name is Helen Spiropoulos. I'm the admissions manager at Stafford Global. And joining me this evening all the way from the UK is Dr. Alison Day. Good evening to you, Dr. Alison.
Good evening. It's lovely to be with you and very nice to see you again, Helen. It's a long time since we've actually met face to face.
Absolutely, absolutely. Unfortunately, this COVID has put this distance between us, but for everyone that is with us this evening, Dr. Alison Day is one of the tutors that does come out through to the UAE when we had the face-to-face workshops. So yes, it's actually very nice to actually see you virtually this evening. Okay, now I am looking here on my right-hand side, and I can see that there are quite a lot of you that have joined us as far afield as Saudi Arabia and Bahrain. Excellent, thank you very much for joining us this evening. Now, how we're going to conduct the webinar this evening is I'm just briefly going to introduce you to Stafford and what our function is. And I'm then going to hand you over to Dr. Alison, who's going to talk to you about the program. And towards the end of the presentation, you will be able to type out any questions that you may like to ask me with regards to recruitment and anything that you would like to ask Dr. Alison with regards to the academics of the program. Now, I am going to be looking at these questions quite carefully because a lot of these questions are very similar, if not identical. So I am going to actually start grouping them together. So please do listen out for that very important question and answer. Okay, so let's get started. Now, who is Stafford Global? Now, Stafford was established in 1993, and we are a resource center for distance learning education in the Middle East, and as well as other countries at the moment as well. We are currently the resource centre for 5 UK universities, one of which is the University of Nottingham. We do offer a variety of programs ranging from certificates to diplomas, bachelors, MBAs, MScs, right through until doctorates. So we really do have all the programs that will suit your personal and your professional needs. Now, the mere fact that you're here with us this evening means that you have already been in touch with one of our experienced academic consultants. And our function is to assist you throughout the application process and ensure that you get that all-important unconditional offer. And we do also offer some academic and some administrative support as well. Okay, so I'm now going to hand you over to Dr. Alison, and I will be joining you again towards the end of the presentation. Over to you.
Thank you, Helen. Before I start the presentation, I'd just like to say how very important the partnership is between Stafford and the University of Nottingham. It's a very active partnership. We talk to each other a lot, and we try to do the best for students. And one of the important parts is when we join together at face-to-face events in the UAE, and we do the academic part of the programme very much in tandem with Stafford, who've thought out a lot of the administrative support that is needed. It's a very smooth operation, and I can reassure you all that it works really well. As we said at the beginning, I'm disappointed not to be coming over to the UAE at the moment because of COVID. But having said that, I'd like to reassure you all that our programs are still active in terms of tutors being available for students. And we're running currently 2 programs from the UK that started since COVID. And although we haven't met face to face with our students, we are running very small tutor groups of 4 or 5 with individual tutors, which means that people have a chance to talk together, meet their tutor, get to know what's expected of them, and it's working very well. So just to reassure you, we hope, of course, very soon we'll be able to meet you again face to face. But let's go on now and let's take a look at the University of Nottingham. It is a very prestigious university. It's one of the Russell Group of universities, which is a high-ranking university. Some of you will know this in the UK. And at the moment, it's 82nd in the world and is ranked in the top 1% of universities internationally. I think it's really important from your perspective because internationally it is recognised in terms of groundbreaking research and teaching excellence. The Times newspaper did actually say last year, 2019, that the university is the nearest Britain has to a truly global university. I'm sure that's true of 2020, because we do put a huge amount of emphasis on the international nature of our programmes. So moving on, let's focus a little bit now on the Postgraduate Certificate of Education International, which is what you're interested in. The important thing to know here is that it is a master's level course. But I think the most important thing, that the strongest part of it, is that it is a blended learning programme. And what we mean by that is that part of your work is done individually, independently, in your own time and in your own home. But the rest of the course is done normally with tutors face-to-face. But in the COVID circumstances, it is still done face-to-face, a large part of it, but online. And that's a really important part of this course. I think I'd like to actually say that one of the important things here is allowing students to reflect on your individual practice, your individual work in contact with students, and looking at theories to enable you to think deeply, to reflect on your own practice, and also to compare approaches in different countries. And I think that's probably one of the richest parts of this course, in that we have students from so many different contexts. Helen's already said where you're actually sitting tonight listening to this presentation. And it's true, when the course begins and we check out where students are actually coming from, we're looking at places far afield like Egypt, Jordan, parts of Africa, Saudi, Kuwait, as well as the UAE. And you bring with you a richness of ideas from your own context. And those are really important as we share ideas about teaching and learning together. I think the other thing which is important is that the course attracts a range of people coming from different backgrounds in terms of education. We have people who work in early years, in kindergarten and in reception, and we have people who work with students at the primary stage as well as secondary. And we sometimes have people who are working in further education and even higher education, because the course lends itself to that spread of experience, because it is based on looking very closely at teaching and learning and what this means to your own students. Let's just look at the course structure. It consists of 3 compulsory elements. The modules themselves carry a 20 credit with them, and I'll come back to that later, and will be completed in just up to 12 months in terms of time. The 3 modules are educational aims and values in international contexts, understanding learning and teaching in international contexts, and inquiry into educational practice in international contexts. Although the modules do stand alone and you work through each of those in turn, there are a lot of threads that run across those 3 modules, and we ask you to make links in terms of your own thinking and use the wealth of resources and materials that we have to support your thinking. Each of those modules is assessed by a 4,000-word assignment, which sounds slightly daunting, but once you start to write, you won't find it so. However, we do recognise that this course is challenging, and it is challenging to work and study at the same time. But let me reassure you that when students start, they usually find a working pattern that suits them, and everyone is very individual. And you may find you're the kind of student who'd like to work for a small amount of time each day, maybe in the evenings, or if you have children, when the children have gone to bed, whilst other students prefer to work at the weekend. But whichever way you do that, you will be securing your own working pattern, and that's perfectly okay within the course. The credits that you get from completing those modules add up to 60, 20 for each module, and those can be used when you finish the course towards a master's. And you could choose to do a master's in education or special needs, or education in educational leadership and management, all done through the University of Nottingham, pretty much in the same way as the PGCE course, which will be distance with materials and resources all provided for you online, and of course individual tutor support and group discussions. So what do you need? What would be the requirements from you personally in order to apply for the course successfully and be accepted? Well, you do need a bachelor's degree with at least a second-class honours or equivalent. And this is the important thing. You might have something which is alongside a bachelor's degree or equivalent to. And that's really important, because your applications will be considered in the light of that equivalent. And I think the important thing to stress here is that if English is not your first language, you do need to gain the qualification, the IELTS qualification, which is the academic one. And that's the International English Language Testing System, with a 6.5 minimum. And if you look across the different elements, you need to score at least 6 in each of those, all of them. And those different elements, you probably know this, are reading, writing, speaking, and listening. The other thing, you do need to be an established educator with access to day-to-day access to a computer and internet. And what we would say would be regular connections to an educational context. However, that could be quite broad. For example, you could be a teacher in a school, you could be teaching online, you could be a private tutor, you could be someone who at the moment might be volunteering in an educational setting, or you could be a teaching assistant. There are a lot of variables there, but the important thing to remember is that you do have ongoing contact with students, with young people, because that's going to be important as part of the course. And just again, be reassured that non-standard applications will be considered on a course-by-course basis, which might be completely relevant to the unique situation you might find yourselves in. So let's move to how do you apply? This is a list of the things that you need to sort out and put together for your application. You need a transcript of your degree certificate and academic qualifications. You need references. You need to make a personal statement of approximately 500 to 700 words. And I think this is really important. Do spend time doing this because this is your opportunity to say why you'd like to join this course, why you think teaching and learning are important, why they're important to you, why you think they might be important to the context in which you are and perhaps working, and why they're important to students and young people. So I do think it's worth spending time in choosing your words carefully. Detailed CV is also needed, plus the Nottingham application form to be completed, and passport copy and proof of English, which I've already mentioned. So we're currently accepting applications as from now for the March 2021 intake. And the programme itself actually starts on the 1st of March with an application deadline of the 21st of February 2021. Now that does seem quite a long way away, and in some ways it is, but time passes quickly. So I would encourage you, if you're really interested, to start to make your applications as soon as possible, because the courses are popular and there are limited places available on each cohort. So please do start as soon as you can. Just to give you a heads up for dates that you might need to keep to one side, the important ones are the weekend of the 12th and 13th of March 2021, because that's where the new course will have a weekend induction programme, and it is compulsory that you join those 2 days. It's unfortunate if people can't do those 2 days once they've been accepted and registered, because those dates are absolutely compulsory, and you may be asked to join another cohort if you can't manage to attend those 2 days. The 2 days will be followed up by lots of tutor input, dates which will be confirmed by your tutors, and you will find out on that day or those 2 days who your tutor will be for the duration of the course. And that tutor will always be the same person to support you and to mark and grade your submissions. I've already said that because of the COVID situation, March 2021 will not be a face-to-face, but I can reassure you yet again that the input you receive from your tutors after the course is in small tutor groups, 4 or 5 students together, and there's plenty of opportunity there to talk together, to talk with each other, to discuss things with your tutor, and feel really confident that you're about to start the course in a really successful way. You'll find on the rest of this slide, as I talk, some of the information there about the fees. Helen might like to add to that later on, but I think you can see for yourself what the fees are looking like for that March 2021 course. I'm going to stop at that point, and Helen's already said that she's collecting questions, and between the two of us, I hope we can answer all the things that you'd like to know about. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much, Alison. That was very informative. And I have opened up the question portal. So please feel free to start typing out, and I can see that some questions have come through. Okay, a question from Mara, and I hope I've pronounced that correctly. What is the difference between the PGCEI and the PGCE?
Right, okay. PGCE is something which you will find students undertake in the UK and elsewhere, but the PGCEI is a special course which the University of Nottingham have put together because it has an international flavour. When you work through the modules, you'll find that we're looking very much at the international context in which all of you will be working, and we're trying to draw that together and make it the focus which rests behind the teaching and learning which you will all be engaging in. So it's a really important course from that perspective. I hope that answers you, Mara.
Okay, and Huda's question is there an opening to a QTS after completing this PGCI?
That's a really good question. I think there are some parts that you might answer, Helen, that I think Stafford have engaged in locally. But if I answer it from a perspective of the University of Nottingham, you will find that QTS is not inbuilt directly into this course. It's really the theory of learning and looking at the theory of learning in relation to your own practice. So you have actually completed the academic side of QTS. And then you need to complete the assessment side of the practical teaching. And you'll find that a number of groups of schools in the UAE are actually doing this right now. And should you come over to the UK to choose to teach, the same applies here. And at the moment, with the arrangements we have in schools in the UK, you don't always need QTS. But I know that most people are quite keen to gain that qualification. Helen, do you have anything to say about the Stafford side of that?
Okay, well, with regards to the QTS, what we normally advise is for the students to get in contact with your academic consultant at Stafford. And we'll be able to give you the link to QTS and give you a little bit of guidance of how the QTS actually works. Okay, and as Dr. Alison has said, QTS is really quite specific for people that want to go and teach in the UK. And we will be able to give you some guidance on this and what you can actually do. So please do get in touch with your academic consultant who's already been probably emailing you or phoning you, and they'll be able to advise you more on that as well. Okay. And Lila's question is, what should I actually state in my personal statement? Can you just clarify that again?
Yes, of course. It is really important. First of all, you need to be very clear about why you want to do the course. What is it about the course that really interests you? And then, why are you interested in teaching and learning? You might choose to put something of your own experience in your personal statement. And if you haven't worked in education for long, you might put something in your personal statement about why education is important or has been important to you in your earlier life. It is important to put something in your statement which is personal about yourself as well. Try to make it come alive. Try to show your enthusiasm as a person, but also about teaching and learning. And really, it's very short, 500 words to 700 is not a lot. So I would plan it before you write it, and then I would write it, and then I would edit it down to 500 words, keeping those important points about why teaching and learning are really important to you. Okay.
Good. Good. And I'm just going to add on to that. When you do send all your application documents to your personal academic consultant at Stafford, they will be able to look through that personal statement as well as any other documents that you have submitted. And they can actually advise you if it needs to be strengthened as per the university requirements. Okay, so do exactly what Dr. Alison has said and do send that through to us and we can evaluate it for you. I do have two questions, Dina and Kuratul, I think that's how you pronounce it. It's actually related to the English requirement. So I'm just going to quickly answer that. I know that one of you has got a master's from the US and the other one has got some other qualification. In order for us to assess whether you do require to do an IELTS, what we do advise is send us all the documents so that we can have a look at it and we can advise you accordingly. Every single student has got different qualifications that they hold. If your qualification comes from an English-speaking medium university, there is a possibility that you don't need to do an IELTS. So we really do need to look at these documents so that we can actually advise you, and it is on a one-to-one basis. So please do send those through to us as soon as possible. Okay, right, I'm just going to quickly go to the next question. Does the program include any lesson observations by the tutor to get feedback, even though it may be virtual?
No, absolutely no. It's really down to you to look at the theory and apply that to your own practice. And the observations would be done by yourself, actually, as a student. And the module 3 assignment, which follows the module 3 work, is where we ask you to do a piece of personal research in your own learning scenario, in your own classroom, or wherever you work with children. And this is where we would ask you, as part of that piece of work, to do some observations of the focus that you choose to do. So it's very much you observing your own students at work for that piece of work. But also for the other modules, we would ask you to apply some of the theory which you're going to learn about within your situation and make your own reflections based on your own observations. So no, we don't observe you in situ, but we do like you to join us for our own tutorials. So that's where we see you, but not in actual context of your practice.
And I'm just going to add to the IELTS requirement. I can see Huda has done her IELTS in 2014, and unfortunately it is far too old. And if you are going to be doing an IELTS examination, please ensure that it is an academic IELTS and not the general. The university will not accept a general IELTS. Okay. Okay, and with regards to my work, I am doing a supply work at school. Will I be able to enroll on this course?
Yes, you absolutely will, because supply work means you're working with students, and if your supply work is terminated at some point, you obviously, I hope, would be able to find other supply work, because it is important by the time you get to module 3 that you do have access to some students in a learning situation. But yes, supply work will not stop you from being part and a very welcome part of the course.
Yeah. Absolutely. As Dr. Alison has said, it's very important that you do have access to a classroom. So again, you can get in touch with us at Stafford, and we'll be able to advise you on how you can go about doing that and what is deemed as access to a classroom. Okay, so it's very important that you do get in touch with us. Remember, your IELTS academic needs to be completed at least within a year. So if it's done in 2014, unfortunately, it's a little bit too old. I know I have answered that question already. Okay, I do have a professional qualification and not a bachelor degree. Will I be accepted onto this program?
Well, I can suggest that you apply for the program, and when your application is looked at very carefully, people will be looking at that to see if it's equivalent to a bachelor degree. So it doesn't have to be a bachelor degree. It can be an equivalent. So please don't be disheartened by not having a bachelor's. You do actually. You will be eligible if you can show that your qualifications are equivalent to.
Absolutely.
And that's quite a lot, doesn't it, Helen?
Absolutely, absolutely. And the other thing that we will be able to assess from your CV as well as your documentation is how many years working experience do you have? Because the university does also have what they call a non-standard entry into the program. And a non-standard entry could mean that you may not have the exact qualification that the university is looking for. But if you do have substantial number of years of working experience, you may have the opportunity to enter the program on a non-standard entry. So once again, a CV and all documentation that you have is very, very important for us to assess. And just to add on the CV, it's imperative that all your roles and responsibilities that you have undertaken in the past couple of years in your teaching career is quite detailed, because that is very important for us to assess how you'll be able to get into this program. Okay. Right, Helen. Yes, continue.
Helen, just to say that's a really, really helpful answer to the question. And I think it's important that people realise that if you don't have the exact qualifications, each case is looked at very individually, isn't it? And you know, it's weighed up whether you have got enough additional experience and expertise, because we would like you to be on the course if you have. So Helen's point about making sure that your CV is very detailed is really important.
Okay, and this is a very, very popular question that we get. Will my degree certificate and transcript state online distance learning?
No, absolutely not. And that's why I think it's a very popular course, because it's a blended course, and because we normally would be meeting with you face to face in person, it means that you will not find distance learning on your certificate. And because in the present circumstances we meet with you regularly online in the tutorials, that's considered and counted as face-to-face as well. So no, there is no way you have distance learning anywhere on your certificate.
Okay, and another important question is, what would happen if I cannot attend the virtual sessions? I have been informed that these are mandatory. Will I be kicked out of the program?
They are mandatory. The first 2 days are mandatory on the induction event. So the dates I gave you earlier, March the 12th and the 13th, are really important dates to put in your diary now, because you will need to attend those to be part of the course, yes.
Okay, and what will happen if I cannot attend the graduation? Obviously, in this COVID situation, how do I get my degree certificate?
Right. Most people don't actually attend the graduation in person, although we're always really delighted to see lots of people coming over from the UAE. And that has happened over the last few years, and it's wonderful. But you will be presented with your certificate if you're not there, and you will be sent your certificate to you, so you'll receive it without much ado. I think that's really important, that you know that you don't have to actually be there. When you finish the course, all your grades go through an exam board at the university, and your coursework is validated by the university, and that then goes forward to the graduation ceremony, which is a little while later. And at the graduation ceremony, you are awarded your certificate, even if you are not there. And what we did this summer, because there wasn't a graduation ceremony because of COVID, is that we had a virtual one, which was great. And so I'm assuming that that will happen for the next couple of graduation ceremonies at least. So you will be able to be part of that virtually, and then all your paperwork will be sent to you individually.
Good, and if I do happen to fail an assignment, which I hope that I don't, will the tutors advise me where I have gone wrong, and can I resubmit?
Yes, absolutely. The pass mark for an assignment is 53. And if you are unfortunate, this does happen, and it's important to face it. No one wants to fail, but it does happen sometimes. So yes, your tutor will help you to analyse the reasons for failing, and you are given another opportunity to resubmit, and you're given 6 weeks after the failing of the assignment to rewrite and resubmit. But yes, your tutor will be there to give you support and challenge you to pass it next time.
Okay, and Layla's question is, can you just give us an idea of the timings for the 2 compulsory workshops, virtual workshops that need to be attended?
Yes, the first one is in March, and the second one would normally be 6 months later, so that would be October 2021. Now, whether we will be able to do a face-to-face October 21 is unknown at the moment. I really hope we will, but I'm not sure that's going to happen. So in the meantime, the tutorials, which I've already mentioned, will happen regularly, about every 6 weeks between the 3 modules. So you do get a chance to meet with your tutor and talk about the course and talk about issues and queries that you might have, as well as with the other students. But generally and normally, it's a 6-month gap between those 2 face-to-face workshops.
Good, okay. And we've got a very interesting question from Anne, and this is specifically for Miss Alison. Okay, so Miss Alison, you did mention that the requirement for the course is to have a teaching background or to be currently teaching. In light of that, would you advise this course to someone who is looking to shift from engineering, because I do have an honours degree in engineering and no job experience, and I do want to get into teaching.
Well, that's a really good question, Anne. And I have two students currently at the moment who were in a very similar situation to yours. One was an engineer with engineering qualifications, and the other was a dentist. And both were interested in working with students. So what they both did, which I think is an important thing to do if you can, is to volunteer in an educational setting. And it could be a school, it could be something comparable to a school. And they are not qualified teachers. They don't class teach. They're not teaching students in a class group. They're not teaching assistants. They are volunteers. But they do volunteer regularly on a really regular basis. And they're known to the students and known to the staff. So they're gradually building up their experience that way, in conjunction with being part of this course. So yes, I would really encourage you. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I would advise that you do get in touch with your academic consultant, because they will be able to advise you about volunteer work, how many hours you should be volunteering per week at a school or in an educational setting. So do get in touch with us and we'll be able to give you some guidance on that as well. And Dina's question is, I'm not in the UAE, will that be a problem? Okay, again, that's not a problem, but do get in touch with us and we'll be able to advise you on how you can actually apply for the program. Okay. All right, and Mayo's question, again, very popular, is how many hours should I be spending a week on this program, as we are currently trying to work remotely at school and we've got a lot of prep work. So how many hours should I be spending on my studies?
Well, again, that's a really good question. It's hard to be very specific. I can give you examples of what other students do, but remember that some people work faster and some people work slower than others. Most people try to do an hour and a half or 2 hours each evening, say during the week, or adding that together, they would do maybe 5 hours Saturday, 5 hours Sunday, because you do need to do that kind of yeah, you do need to do that sort of timing. And you have to remember as well that it's only for a short period of time. And it is tough, it is challenging, but it's only for 10 months to a year, and you will have your qualification, hopefully. So although it's very challenging, it's short term. But I would suggest that 1.5 to 2 hours per evening, or put that together at a weekend. Having said that, I know other students have worked on a block of a whole weekend, and then another whole weekend, because they've got family commitments, and other family members perhaps have looked after the children at the weekend to allow them to do that. So it's working out a pattern that works for you. Okay.
Good. Okay, and Wala, your question is related to access to a teaching environment. So it's very similar to what we have already discussed. At the time when you do start the program, you must be able to have access to a classroom or be within an educational setting. So again, do get in touch with us at Stafford and we'll be able to give you some guidance on that. Another question which is very popular, do we get breaks in between the modules, or is it consistent teaching?
That is a good question. It's not necessarily consistent teaching, but it is consistent work. So there isn't a break between the module, but within the module, you'll find that you're working through activities individually on your own, and then you come to a point where you have to do a piece of work which is sent to the university to be graded, and then you do another piece of work, and finally an assignment. So that's one module, and as soon as you finish the assignment for one module, you start again on the next module. But again, at that stage, you're working independently through the different activities and readings. So the pace is different because the pace will then be your own. You know, how quickly you work through those activities and do the reading. So the pace is very much yours. The only time you need to be very much aware of fitting in with others is when you submit your assignments, and you must submit your assignments on a certain day at a certain time or by a certain time, because the university deducts points if you don't submit your assignment at the deadline day. So the rest of the time is very much you choosing which days you work, how fast you work, how slow you work. But the basic answer to your question is there is no break, no official break between those modules.
Okay, and another popular question, will I be able to progress into a master's with various specializations once I do complete this PGCEI?
Yes, you will. If you complete all of the modules successfully, and by that I mean pass beyond 53, grade 53 for your assignments, you automatically have an entrance to a master's. And some people like to take a space when they finish PGCEI. They like to take some time to relax a bit and take some time out. Other people are quite happy to immediately start their master's. And that is possible because there are different starting points for the master's courses during the university year. I hope that answers it.
Good, very clear indeed. And a question from Amber is there any possibility that I can actually pause my studies for unforeseen circumstances? And if that's the case, what would be the maximum duration that I can complete the program?
That's a really helpful and good question, Amber. Because that does happen to people during the course for all sorts of reasons, either personal reasons or family reasons or work reasons. You start the course and then something happens and you are allowed to suspend your studies. It's called a voluntary interruption of studies, which you have to apply for and give reasons for, but you are allowed to do it, and you're allowed to do that for up to a year, and then you can rejoin the programme. And perhaps at this point, I should also say that students are allowed to apply for extensions to work if, again, something happens quite suddenly, like illness or family issues. And you're allowed to apply for a short extension, but you must have evidence, either doctor's certificate, medical certificate, or somebody verifying something that has happened at school that's going to prevent you from submitting your work. But that is possible too. So the shorter extensions are possible, and tutors usually support those. You'll find your tutor will be very happy to support those. But the longer one, which is the voluntary interruption, can take up to a year. And that's absolutely fine.
Okay, and another question, which is the opposite of this one, is there any possibility that I can do this program in less than 12 months?
Very, very occasionally, students have been allowed to do what we call a fast track, but it isn't advisable because of the nature of the course and because of the depth needed in terms of working through the activities and doing all the readings, the academic reading and writing. People who have done it, I'm quite sure, had they done it at the normal and usual pace, would have gained a higher grade. They have passed, but it's very, very hectic. It's very, very stressful. And I definitely wouldn't recommend it, although people have asked to do it and people have been allowed to do it, but it's not something I would honestly, truly recommend, unless you happen to be in a situation where you're not teaching full time. Okay.
Good. Okay, and we have one final question from David, and the question is to you, Dr. Alison. Will you be tutoring on this program, and if so, which modules?
Right, okay. Well, I will be part of the course because I coordinate the course. So I will have an overview of the course, but as well as that, I have a group of 20 students, as do the other tutors. So yes, I teach on the course and I liaise with students on the course, and hopefully I challenge students but support them at the same time. So yes.
Absolutely good. Okay, excellent. Well, we've managed to actually group all these questions together. Thank you very much. Very, very informative questions. And as Dr. Alison has said, we only take a limited number of applicants per cohort. So I do strongly advise that you start considering in sending your application documents as early as now. The application has opened already at the university, so we can actually send through all your documents for assessment. Okay, so please do get in touch with your academic consultant, send that very important document in, and let us actually assist you to get that unconditional offer. Again, Dr. Alison, wonderful seeing you. Thank you so much. It was a very, very good webinar this evening, and good evening to everyone, and hope that we will see you all on the program.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody. And thank you, Helen.